we were proud just to live in the moment. Whenever we had one of those special games, it was like, man, that was incredible. Like that was, and then I think right around week 12 or 13, is when all the talk, I believe, started to happen about the possibilities of getting this record. And then it became, a little bit nerve wracking, because it was always being talked about. Okay, how many touchdowns did he have this week? How many yards? And so the pressure did mount, but we still felt like we were unstoppable. To be honest with you, that's just the way we felt. Like there was no one at that time that could stop us from doing what we wanted to do.
In 2006, the culture that head coach Marty Schottenheimer instilled came to fruition. The Bolts were stacked in all phases of the game as they were tough in the trenches and also led the league in sacks, with 2 players finishing in the top 10 in Shawne Merriman and Shawn Phillips. But this was all built around a new starting quarterback, Philip Rivers. Now that Drew Brees was gone, the team was in the hands of a third-year QB out of NC State with 0 career starts, and he certainly lived up to the billing.
The Chargers were a league best 14-2 in 2006. No team scored more points, even Peyton Manning's Colts. And to complement the high-powered offense was a stingy defense that ranked in the top 10 in points allowed. There were stars up and down the roster, but none brighter than LT. 9 straight 100-yard games, over 2,300 all-purpose yards, 31 scores, plus 2 passing touchdowns for good measure. Quite simply, a performance for the ages. For Haley Elwood, I'm Chris Hayre. This is Running for History, Episode 5, the 2006 Chargers, presented by Lazy Dog.
San Diego Chargers select LaDainian Tomlinson.
Touchdown LT! LaDainian Tomlinson, one step closer to football immortality. And the handoff to Tomlinson, and he will gallop into the end zone. Charger fans are witnesses to history!
Hey everybody, have you checked out the TV dinners over at Lazy Dog yet? They're great for those days where you just don't feel like cooking. They're made in-house, frozen in retro-style trays, and ready to pop in the oven whenever you need them. One of my favorites, the chicken pot pie. It's filled with slow-roasted, hand-shredded chicken breast, seasonal vegetables, and a pie dough crust. And now for the fall, they've got a new oven-roasted turkey dinner. I'm talking turkey, gravy, and all the trimmings. It's even got a salted caramel pumpkin cheesecake with graham cracker crumble for dessert. Get them at Lazy Dog for pickup or delivery, and you can check it out at lazydogrestaurants.com. By the beginning of the 2006 season, LaDainian Tomlinson was as relevant as any American athlete. As LA Times writer Sam Farmer remembers, LT took advantage of his status to pick the brains of others in his orbit.
He's one of those guys who would look to other sports. He would look to Michael Jordan. He would look to Tiger Woods, try to pick their brain as to what they did best and see how he could apply that. He had a sort of athletic intelligence that he would look beyond the realms of football, look beyond the boundaries, and try to find people in other sports who could relate on that super high altitude level of what makes people great. And he would be in that sort of collection of athletes that is at the very, very upper reaches of his sport.
When you start having consistency doing it at a high level, when you're performing at a high level and you're in and you're out, you're having success, you try to find ways to make sure you stay on top of your game, but also ways that you can challenge yourself. Because, it gets hard. It gets harder and harder to stay at the top because everybody obviously is aiming for you. And so during that time, I was fortunate enough to get a chance to be around Michael Jordan a little bit, play some golf with him, pick his brain, exchange phone numbers. And I would call MJ from time to time. And I do remember having that conversation, Chris, about how do I always make sure that I have a chip on my shoulder? How do I always not take it for granted, the position that I'm in? And he said, the one thing that he tried to do, he tried to focus every single night he went out there on the court. He told himself that there was somebody in that audience that hadn't seen them play before, and he wanted to put on a show for them. And that was great perspective, because I think sometimes as players we get lost in that these fans are coming to see us play, and some people for their very first time. And when you put that in perspective, sure, you want to put on a show for that kid that's coming to watch you for the very first time. So that was some of what I got from MJ. In terms of Tiger, I think just the mental focus that it takes to dial in every single day and attack every single day, as in terms of what am I going to get better today with, or what am I going to get to better today at. And Tiger, there was nobody better at doing that, compartmentalizing, what he had to do, obviously on the course, but also all the business stuff and all the endorsements that he had to, go through as well as I was going through that. So having his perspective really taught me how to balance all of those things that I was going through in my life at that time.
While Tomlinson was always focused on improving, so too were Marty Schottenheimer and the Chargers. The Bolts finished 9-7 and missed the playoffs in 2005. In 2006, linebacker Shawn Phillips remembers a different vibe around practice.
It was always competitive. It was so competitive that I think that's why we were good, because it was always so competitive, because offense thought they were the best side of the ball. Defense thought they were the best side. We even had a good special teams as well too, right? But it was just always competitive. I mean, you know how it is. I mean, in the NFL, it's usually pretty competitive anyway. But when you got a bunch of dominant egos and dominant alpha males, that it was just competitive. Everyone thought that they were better.
Second-round rookie Marcus McNeil recalls the trial by fire these practices put him through, and how battles with stars like Shawne Merriman helped prepare him for the next level of football.
When I came, I brought my lunch pail to work. I knew I had people like Shawne Merriman, Shawn Phillips rushing off the edge that was going to give me a good look in practice, and I took advantage of it. And having some pass rushes like that to go against every week, it just made me stronger and ready for game day.
I mean, sometimes the practices were harder than the games, because that's how much we would compete, and we had the type of guys to really get on you, right? It was a players run situation where we started practice, ended practice. There was no holding back in the locker room. It's like if a guy's not working hard, then you knew that somebody was going to get on you. LT being one, and Low Nail and some of the older guys, but that built a culture. That was a culture that we had. That if you knew your top players, the biggest guys on your team, were working all the time, you knew you couldn't slack.
While Marty was pushing the Bolts on the practice field, LaDainian Tomlinson found a way to do it off the field. LT knew he was on a roster filled with egos and competitors, so he decided to speak their language.
To challenge guys. And it was my way of doing it. It was my way of having that personal touch with different guys on the team. But it started to go both ways, Chris. I mean, I would do that, to Shawn Phillips, and pretty soon Shawn Phillips would beat me to it. We'll come in that week and he'll say, LT, well, you got Ray Lewis and the Ravens this week. What you gonna have, about 40 yards? And then he'll walk away. And I'll be like, okay. But it was a way of motivating you, and so that started to permeate throughout the locker room. That was something how we challenged each other and got each other ready to play.
LT set the tone for the entire roster. Sometimes that meant being vocal and challenging other guys to be at their best. But as Chris Dielman remembers, it was usually less showy than that.
He led by example. You could see he'd come to camp in shape, and he would come ready to rock and roll. And, with how great he was as a running back, it just elevated our level of, we don't want to let him down. And then, you throw a guy like Phillip Rivers in the mix, who's just full of piss and vinegar, man. He's awesome. Like Phillip, and he's getting in your ear. He's chirping at, you can get in there. Let's get.
Tomlinson's rock-solid presence was needed more than ever in 2006, as the Bolts roster was undergoing a change at arguably the most significant position. After tearing his labrum in the final game of the 2005 season, Drew Brees was out in San Diego and on to the Saints. As Antonio Gates remembers, it was finally time for third-year quarterback Philip Rivers to take the reins and show what he could do.
That's what happened. He sat for some years. He was able to watch how to be a quarterback in this league, and he was able to, add it to what he already brought to the table, which is natural leadership ability. And I think that's what you do. I think you learn from the ones that's in front of you, good and bad, and you add it to what you bring to the table naturally. And Philip was already a natural leader by just being around him in the locker room before he stepped foot on the football field.
The quarterback is the captain of the offense who orchestrates every play. Changing the signal caller usually completely changes the offense. Farmer, Phillips, and center Nick Hardwick remember how Marty Ball and LT made the transition much more seamless.
To have a guy like LaDainian Tomlinson who can be the fixture on that team and be sort of the bridge that carries you from one quarterback era to the next, and to be so reliant on him and to have him be so reliable was essential to the success of the Chargers.
We got an old saying in football on offense, they only could do two things, run or pass. And so if the run part was taken care of, all you got to do is worry about the passing part. So that's kind of where the dynamic came from.
When Phil came in, we got off to a great start. And so we just kind of kept rolling. And the theme never really changed from Marty Ball with Drew to Marty Ball with Phil. And I guess kind of with a young quarterback who was in his third year, but his first year starting, it's same old, same old. Hey, we're going to pound the rock. We're going to play action pass, and we're going to block them on third down when we have to drop back, but we hope not to. It's like run first mentality, get vertical, take care of the football. Don't take undue risks.
I think we all had time to come to grips with Drew was going to move on eventually, and Philip was going to be our quarterback. It took 2 years. But when Philip took over, I really think everybody was just like, okay, we knew this was coming. Let's win. And it helped that first year. Obviously, we won 10 in a row up, something crazy. First year of first year of Philip starting. And so that obviously helped the transition from Drew to Philip, because we were winning and we were having fun. And all of us was thinking, okay, this is going to work out.
Hey everybody, have you checked out the TV dinners over at Lazy Dog yet? They're great for those days where you just don't feel like cooking. You just pop them in the oven and you're done. One of my favorites, the chicken pot pie. It's filled with slow roasted hand shredded chicken breast and seasonal vegetables in a pie dough crust. And now for the fall, they've got a new oven roasted turkey dinner. I'm talking turkey with gravy and all the trimmings. It's even got a pumpkin cheesecake dessert. Get them at Lazy Dog for pickup or delivery, and you can check it out at lazydogrestaurants.com. The Chargers kicked off the season in Oakland on Monday night. Rivers wouldn't have to do much as he completed the ball 8 of 11 times for just over 100 yards and a score. What he spent most of his night doing was handing the ball off to LT 31 times as the Chargers demolished the Raiders 27-0. The Bolts dominated on defense too, sacking the Raiders 9 times, 3 of them by Shawne Merriman.
Having a game like that under the lights, first game of the year, and I remember all the text messages I was getting from like high school coaches, my high school teammates, everybody, because we would, when you're the Monday night game, you're the only show in town.
The very next week, the Chargers blew out the Titans 40-7. Tomlinson and backup running back Michael Turner combined for over 200 rushing yards, while LT finished with 2 scores. On the other side of the ball, Merriman was at it again, this time with an interception and 2 defended passes.
You always hear about these sophomore slumps where you have people and I knew people were going to come out and double team and slide protection and chip off the edge and tighten. So I was mentally prepared for like war my 2006 year.
The Chargers followed their Week 3 bye with maybe LT's 2 weakest games that season. The Ravens kept Tomlinson out of the end zone and handed the Chargers their first loss of the season. The following week against the Steelers, LT finished under 3 yards per carry and 36 rushing yards, by far the lowest that season. But unlike the Ravens game, the Bolts beat the Steelers by 2 scores. Here's Antonio Gates and former Steelers safety Ryan Clark to explain how Tomlinson was still impacting games even when his stat line wasn't as gaudy as it typically is.
What happens is that although from a statistics standpoint, he's not, playing as well, the impact of what he brings to the game is still there. And I think sometimes that's why it's very hard to look at the stat sheet to realize what a guy really means to a team or really what he means to a game. The whole philosophy was for the Steelers to stop the run, I'd imagine, because that's how good he was. And what it does is that it gives guys like myself, guys on the outside, whether or not it was Malcolm and Vincent, Chambers, we had, Buster Davis, who knows who was there, Legadoo. We had so many guys that could play. But at the end of the day, it gives us the opportunity to make plays one-on-one, which obviously gave me an opportunity to make plays one-on-one, which is like 7-on-7 for Phillip to sit back in the pocket and throw in the football. So that would be the domino effect of what LT brings to the table.
Yeah, I think because you got to pay so much attention to him. You got to have 8-man boxes. You have to have linebackers that stay home. Every play action pass is like a freaking fire drill, right? The safeties are running, the linebackers are running because you got to stop that dude. And so that allows guys like Jackson, like Gates to get one-on-one coverage. And you also have a Pro Bowl quarterback. And so when you think about all of those things that went into stopping him, it allowed the team to be better. And that's what was crazy. At the time they played in San Diego, and they had some of the better teams in the league. And when you think about a run game, you think about being able to have success later on in the season, or understanding that if you stop the run game, they have more chances to be great in the pass. And so I think, that night, we all knew coming into the game, it's about getting at LT.
By this point, the Chargers looked like contenders at 3-1. Tomlinson, though, was not yet an MVP candidate. He had only 3 total scores and on pace for just 12, as John Spanos recalls.
Yeah, it's funny because, again, you're not really it's not the primary focus. You're not really thinking about it. And it's funny the way the year started, because if I remember correctly, in the first few weeks, I want to say in the first 4 weeks, 2 of the games, he didn't even score a touchdown, right? And then we had a game in San Francisco that really stands out. It's a game I'll never forget. They came out of the gates early, scored a touchdown. Alex Smith was their quarterback. And then we responded and kind of took the game over, put up almost 50 points. I think we finished with 48 points. LT had 4 touchdowns.
I guess we were kind of moseying along, I would say, the first part of the year. And part of that was, I think, still trying to find exactly who we were as an offense, even though we knew we can run the ball and all those kinds of things. But that San Francisco game was really domination for us. That was like taking it to the next level. And I think that's when we started to hit our peak. So, yes, I do remember. In fact, I remember jumping over. Speaking of goal line leaps, that was one of my favorite ones. I think I have that picture on the wall somewhere here in my house of me jumping over the 49ers during that game.
Well, you've got Neal, you've got LT, you've got 2 tight ends, and it is LT leaping. Touchdown, San Diego! On the trampoline and into the end zone for his 3rd touchdown of the half.
Tomlinson's 4 rushing scores lifted the Chargers to a blowout victory over the 49ers. It was LT's entry into the MVP conversation, stamped by the iconic diving leap over Hardwick in the offensive line.
And he was smart about it. He was smart about and that's part of the knowledge of the game and knowing the situation and knowing when, hey, it's really time to jump up over this pile and get about 8 feet in the air and extend myself, and this could be ugly on the way down. But he made those choices, but they were smart choices.
The leap is homage to Walter Payton, because, he did it so gracefully. He was the first person that I really noticed doing it when I was a kid, 5, 6 years old, seeing Walter Payton jumping over the pile. I always envisioned myself doing that. In fact, I used to get in trouble at home because I would I would leap over the couch, you know, the arm of the couch onto the couch. I used to take my football and leap over, and my mom would get so mad at me for doing that because she thought I was going to hurt myself.
The following week, it was back to the division, a road game at Arrowhead against the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chargers were down 2 touchdowns multiple times throughout the game. A 1-yard Tomlinson touchdown pass tied the game up with 5 minutes remaining, but it still wouldn't be enough. Kansas City drove down the field and set Lawrence Tynes up for the game-winning field goal. It was a crushing loss, but it also presented a turning point in the season. LT wrote a poem for his teammates, and as Shawne Merriman remembers, it had an impact.
I do remember the emotions that were felt in the room when that happened. LT was one of those, he's just one of those guys, man, that he didn't really have to talk a whole lot. But when he did, like I said, you can hear a pin drop. And at that moment, we knew it from the heart what it meant to him for us to go out and have a season that we did.
The Chiefs game would be the last regular season loss the Chargers would have in 2006. The team went 10-0 the rest of the way. Tomlinson would run for multiple touchdowns every game the next 8 weeks, culminating in a 2-score performance during the Week 15 rematch against the Chiefs. During that 8-game span, LT averaged over 140 yards a game and scored 21 rushing touchdowns, not to mention 2 more receiving and 1 thrown. It was a time when you saw a lot of LT's iconic finger roll. For team owner Dean Spanos and former beat reporter Jim Trotter, it was the subtle celebration that became forever linked to number 21.
That was LT's personality. Didn't want to be too flashy, didn't want to be over the top on it. It just said, touchdown, thank you very much, kind of is the way I looked at it. And I think most people like that it's a little bit understated, not too crazy out there.
What it says to me, truthfully, is that these guys have given thought to it. Like, it doesn't just happen to where you're going to do that every time you score a touchdown. You might do it, you know, just instinctually 1 time or 2 times. Someone says something, and then you think in your mind, like, yeah, that's mine. So you continue to do it.
I wanted to bring an element of my second favorite sport, which is basketball. I wanted to bring that element to the football field in some aspects. And so, you know, this was something that I had thought about over time. So being creative, the first thing that you learn in basketball is how to shoot a layup. I mean, it's the basics. That's the foundation of learning to play basketball. You go, you know, you dribble, you hit the backboard, you know, and do a layup. But as you evolve in that layup, you start to learn how to finger roll. You know, everybody remember Dr. J and those guys, George Gervin, doing the finger roll. It became something that was so sweet. So my thought was, I wanted to do a finger roll with the football when I scored. But I guess the thought behind it was, I was initially saying to the defense, well, you know, the easiest drill in basketball is to do a layup. Well, if I go in standing up and I do a layup, it was that easy. That's what I'm essentially saying to the defense. And so it just became my signature. And if you notice, Chris, if I fell down going into the end zone, I never did it. I had to be going in standing up in order to do the finger roll.
From the right to the left, it is 2nd and 1 from the 49ers 6-yard line. Little pitch back, LT, right side, plenty of room. Touchdown, San Diego!
Another iconic element of LT's game was his lethal stiff arm and how he could send defenders into the dirt if they got too close.
The stiff arm was something that, you know, obviously you develop over time, but it was a part of my game that I had at a very young age. I mean, I used to use my stiff arm, honestly, in Pop Warner. I was always a kid that was very comfortable running with the football in both hands, in both arms. And so I developed that at a young age, the ability to use my off arm to keep defenders away from me and off of me. And over time, there are drills that you can do to work on the stiff arm because it's a punch. And so you work on punching a bag, a bag out on the practice field. We used to do that, sometimes in individual drills. You get the ball in one hand, you run, somebody's holding the bag, and you try to punch that bag as hard as you can at the right time. And so as I did that constantly, my stiff arm just got stronger and got quicker and faster, just like a boxer would. As a boxer is working on his craft. It was the same way with my stiff arm. I had a gift to throw that stiff arm, and it was one of my favorite things to do. So yeah, of course, knocking the guy's helmet off is probably my greatest stiff arm, I would say, because it obviously led to a touchdown after that.
Gates creates all kinds of mismatches depending on where he lines up. Here's Tomlinson, big burst, still on his feet, the 20, the 10, touchdown, second of the first quarter, 90th of Tomlinson's NFL career.
Tomlinson finished the Bolts' victory over the Rams with 240 all-purpose yards and 3 scores, averaging 7 yards per carry. The very next week, Tomlinson dominated the Browns, averaging over 9.5 yards per carry.
1st and 10 from the Cleveland 42, trailing 12-10. Rivers under center, hands it off. Tomlinson up the middle, and there he goes! 30, 25, 20, 15, 10, chased from behind, touchdown, San Diego!
As John Spanos remembers, it was a time where LT was running and scoring at will, even after starting a game down 3 scores.
It just was like every week, like the touchdown count for LT was like 4, 3, 4, 2, 4. And it's like, wow. And there were some games in there, we go to Cincinnati, we're down 21-0 like that, and then 28-7 at the half, and we just come storming back, right? And LT was a big part of that game and winning it. So, it was kind of one of those things where you got towards the end of the year, it's like, hey, wow, like we're witnessing history here.
1st and goal just inside the 10. Here comes LT. Cuts it back all the way to the end zone for the touchdown.
We got down 21-0 in a hurry. It was the first quarter, we were down 21-0. And I remember nobody panicked. We all felt like, hey guys, there's a lot of football left to be played. We're going to come back. We're going to make a run at this game. And pretty soon, we did. We started to move the ball. And what happened was, it just so happened that when we got down in the red zone, a lot of runs popped, like 10, 15 yards here, they popped, and I was able to, get in the end zone and have 4 touchdowns that day. But it wasn't like, we were just dominating them, running the football, and it was easy. It was a tough game that we had to fight back.
The very next week, the Bolts would find themselves down again, this time 17 points to the rival Broncos. But there was no panic in this team. Tomlinson scored 4 times that game, with 3 of them coming in the final 20 minutes of regulation to help lift the Chargers to another comeback victory. LT also became the fastest player in NFL history to reach 100 scores.
Knocking on the door of 100 right now on 1st and goal. Jackson in motion. Rivers handoff. Tomlinson up the middle. He's got it! Triple digits! Touchdown, LaDainian Tomlinson. 1-0 for Mr. Everything.
Denver safety at the time, Domonique Foxworth, still remembers the feeling of trying to bring down number 21.
Terrible. It was terrible. Doing anything against him was terrible. I promise you. So tackling him was enormous. I felt incredible to be able to bring him to the ground. That was a very difficult task to accomplish. And I wasn't joking about, I remember quite clearly playing nickelback, which is, for those that don't understand, it's like on passing downs, you essentially go in and play like a linebacker position. And so they would design plays to make sure that we would have to tackle. So I'd be the unblocked man in the hole with LT. And I remember all the times that I won because there were so few.
The following week, the Chargers completed a sweep of the Raiders for the 3rd straight season. Shawn Phillips remembers the way his coach would prepare them to face off against the Silver and Black.
He always started off with, listen, all you guys got to do is do your job. We know that they're going to mess up. They're going to screw up. They're going to have penalties. They're going to shoot themselves in the foot. We know that they were going to do that. So therefore, we knew we just had to go out and play our style of football.
That 2006 roster was close, like a family. And this family had a favorite game to play outside of football.
Well, Domino's with everyone, it was competitive. You know what I mean? Whether it was everyone in the locker room, Rashae Caldwell, rest in peace, myself, Carlos Polk, those Domino's games got very competitive. Everyone, because just been Domino's in general, everyone's talking trash and And you know how it is, a bunch of alpha aggro males playing dominoes, competing against each other. So those games got played down to the last minute before we ran out on the field for practice.
You know, because it's still about chemistry in football. It's still about unity and coming together for one common purpose. And what way to do that to sit down, you have a group of guys around the table and you're playing dominoes, you're connecting on a different level.
I do remember the Domino's games and how intense those games were and how upset those games were, all the way to the card games. But I think what it built was camaraderie and chemistry for us, which allowed us to go out and play for one another. Because what we had was we became friends. We became friends in those locker rooms. And then what happened when you went on the field, you're not only playing to win the game, but you're playing for your friend.
By December, Gates and the Chargers were rolling with 5 straight victories. Players like Hardwick remember the way winning turned infectious as the team got on a roll.
And Marty would say this: winning breeds winning breeds winning breeds winning. And once you started winning, and once you started getting that momentum on your side, it was almost hard to lose. And that's how we felt about the year. It just went. And when you win like that, my God, it happens in the blink of an eye. You wish those winning seasons felt as long as the losing ones so you could really enjoy them. But it was like week after week after week, and it just happens in a hurry. And all of a sudden you're 14-2 and setting records and having a blast. And unfortunately, it didn't end how we wanted it to. But man, that was a fun year.
You know, it wasn't all about X's and O's at that time. It was just about 2-on-1, mano a mano, 600 against 300. That's what we would say. And when you have a guy like LaDainian, and again, at the time, I didn't really acknowledge it and didn't know it. It was until he left when I was like, wow, I remember our blocking schemes used to be, we double team the defensive lineman and we leave the guy in the back end for LaDainian because he's going to make a miss. Do you know how easy that makes your job? You could just double team a guy and leave the safety and leave the linebacker because we know a guy like LaDainian is going to make you miss.
LT's ability to consistently make one defender miss is something that crippled defenses. Listen to Domonique Foxworth explain why.
A well-designed run defense ends up with one free person in the ball carrier. That's like considered success. The problem is if that one free person can't tackle the ball carrier consistently enough, you got a problem. So you got to have other people beating blocks, and still, that may not be enough.
Really think about what Foxworth just said there. That's just how dominant Tomlinson was in 2006. But it was what LT did during the week that impressed Merriman the most.
Man, I'm not going to lie to you. It was probably, for me personally, it was more fun watching LT sometime in practice because that's the real work that people don't get a chance to see. And LT made it look so easy on game day that, you get a chance to see the real work during practice during the week.
One game before the record breaker against Denver, the Chargers beat the Buffalo Bills 24-21. Tomlinson tied and then passed his Texas childhood hero and eventual mentor Emmitt Smith's mark of 25 touchdowns, which stood as an NFL record for nearly a decade.
And like, LT fashion, he never made a big deal about it. We knew, and we were kind of looking at it, but we never, kind of talked about it publicly. We just kind of looked at the stats and you'll see little things popping up and how close he was to Emmitt Smith's record. And he never made a big deal about it.
2nd and goal. I formation. Hand off LT. Outside, left side. Touchdown! He did it one more time.
The great one, his 2nd touchdown of the game.
The dream that I had of making it to the NFL and being just like him, and then meeting him as a 12-year-old and getting, having that boost of confidence that, man, I just met Emmitt Smith, this NFL all-star, I want to break his records one day. I want to do what he's doing. To be in that position as a kid and then ultimately have the opportunity to do it. I mean, that's the life of folk stories, if you will. Like, that doesn't happen to the average person. And so to be in that position, to have a chance to break my idol's record man, I got emotional about it at the time because it was really like coming full circle.
The records at the time, you don't understand, it's not that big of a deal. Like, it's thank you, appreciate it, everything is great. And then when you step away from the game, you're like, oh man, I got this record. You know, so you can be retired 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and your name is always still there. And that's how I would always look at LT.
And that's how the guys look at the 2006 season. It was a blur in the moment because everyone was so focused on going 1-0 each week like their coach taught them to. Donnie Edwards and Nate Kading look back on those times fondly.
We worked hard. We all ran it for the right reason. I think a lot of us, we all hung out together. We're always spending time. I know we changed the locker room that year, and we spent a lot of time together. And we, on Thursdays nights, I know that the linebackers, where we always got food, and we invite coaches and everybody to come down there, hang out, watch film. I think we really, really knew that we had a great team, and we put the time and effort to make it happen.
You're always just kind of head down thinking about the next game and what you need to do to go forward there. And I think the whole team had that mentality. When you get rolling and start rattling off the wins like we were doing that year, you kind of get in that flow state where things are just moving, and you gotta have that, like you're walking that tightrope, that kind of tunnel vision, one step in front of the next. I know that's what Marty was really preaching then too, is, hey, it's a good problem to have where the distractions get louder and the noise gets louder, but hey, let's tune all that stuff out and let's focus on winning, one game after the next, because, like we all know, the NFL could be a fragile business. So, one week you think you got the thing licked, and then the next one it can fall off on you. So I think that was a great, Marty did a great job of leading the team then, just keeping everybody super focused.
2006 was also the year where fantasy football owners were rooting for LT to score as much as the Chargers faithful. Here's ESPN's Eric Karabell on the GOAT season in fantasy history.
Not only did he have an amazing season in 2006, he scored more than 110 PPR points than anybody else. Larry Johnson was second. That's how impactful Tomlinson was. It was hard not to win your fantasy league in 2006 if you had Tomlinson, because there was just nobody putting up those points. And his year was unbelievable. And again, we've never seen anything like it. And we can give you all the totals here, the rushing yards, the all-purpose. He also had 2 passing touchdowns, 3 receiving touchdowns, but he had 8 consecutive games with multiple touchdowns. He had 13 touchdowns in November alone. And in weeks 8 through 16, leading you up to your fantasy title games, he averaged 169 scrimmage yards and 2.5 touchdowns per game. So he was doing it every week in November and December. And obviously the fantasy playoffs in late December, he was still putting up the numbers, impactful games there. So that's unbelievable. There was nobody else even coming close.
Tomlinson's all-time season was one of the many reasons Karabell named him the best fantasy player of the decade.
Tomlinson, we never had to worry about him for that 6-year period. And really, it was like 9 years, his entire Chargers career. We never had to worry about him in fantasy. Every year, he was a top 10 running back. Every year, he put up the numbers, the touchdowns, the receptions, the rushing yards, the total yards from scrimmage. Nobody's like 2,000 yards. He did it twice from scrimmage.
Hey, everybody, have you checked out the TV dinners over at Lazy Dog yet? They're great for those days where you just don't feel like cooking. You just pop them in the oven and you're done. One of my favorites, the chicken pot pie. It's filled with slow roasted hand shredded chicken breast and seasonal vegetables in a pie dough crust. And now for the fall, they've got a new oven roasted turkey dinner. I'm talking turkey with gravy and all the trimmings. It's even got a pumpkin cheesecake dessert. Get them at Lazy Dog for pickup or delivery, and you can check it out at lazydogrestaurants.com. In a year unlike any other, the milestone that may have meant the most to Tomlinson was the one named after his childhood idol, the man who inspired his goal line leaps, the Walter Payton Man of the Year Award. And to make it even sweeter, Tomlinson was a co-winner with his former high school all-star teammate and friend, Drew Brees. Here's Doug Flutie and team owner Dean Spanos.
Mature guys at a young age knew what it was about, understood how to get involved in the community and do the things the right way. So even to represent your team as Walter Payton Man of the Year is a great honor. And for both these guys, I looked at them as kind of like the kids that I was helping bring along while I was out there, but they were going to do what they did no matter where I was. I was just admiring from a distance.
He's never said this to me, but I would bet if you asked him one of the most special moments in your life, I would say that has to go down as one of the special moments. That had to mean a lot to him. And Drew Brees and I know he were best of buddies and still are good friends. So I think all of that combined was kind of really special for him.
Dreaming about being a running back because of Walter, to this guy that I knew in high school. You know, we came into the league together. We used to be teammates. We actually did community service together, you know, in the community, served that community together, to now years later, to be in a position where we're sharing this prestigious award, the MVP off the field for the National Football League. I mean, you can't write a better story. And not only that, if you recall, Drew was the runner-up really for the MVP that year. You know, we almost shared that as well. I mean, it was a close race that I barely edged him out in, but it could have very well been co-MVPs as well as co-Walter Payton Man of the Year.
LaDainian Tomlinson saw firsthand how the Bears legend made him want to be a better football player and man. If anyone knew what this award meant to LaDainian, it was his mother.
He told me something about meeting Walter Payton's family, his wife and kids. And so I think even because Walter wasn't there, just to see that his family, you know, appreciated he and Drew for, you know, just doing what they do, you know, because this is something that when you're involved with football, it's a family.
What we thought about was how proud we were making our family, you know, our community high schools where we come from, and the state of Texas, you know, the pride that we have for our state of growing up there, and having both of us holding this prestigious award of being Walter Payton NFL Man of the Years. Like, that's like not many people can say that, let alone, you know, Texas. The other thing is, you know, it was like the journey that you think about, like this journey that we have been through. Now, here we were at I think it was like at NFL Honors or something that we both, I have that picture of Drew and I both, you know, with our trophy, you know, with our Walter Payton Man of the Year awards, holding it together. And it's like one of the best pictures ever.
The award was evidence of the impact Tomlinson had on his community. Here's John and Dean Spanos.
You know, when you see powder blue jerseys, you think of LaDainian Tomlinson, right? And there's so many, you know how many fans I talked to today when we're on the road and we got all these fans we run into, and I love, you know, asking people, hey, you know, how did you become a Charger fan? It's amazing for how many of them it was, you know, this guy LaDainian Tomlinson, just, I couldn't stop watching him, you know, like he made me a Charger fan. That's how impactful he is, right? He's a guy who didn't just help us win games, he helped build our fan base. He made a positive impact in the community. He's part of our family. He'll forever be part of the Charger family.
And I know a lot of people used to come just to see him play. It didn't matter if we won or lost, okay? And I think that magic, as I like to use the word magic, I just created something in our team that hadn't been there in a long time.
This franchise started in 1960, right? Like before any of us were born. And when you look, like that period from when we drafted him, okay, and really starting mainly in 2004 when we won our first division title with him, and the success we had, like the number of games we won, the division titles we won, has been the most successful stretch of any period in this franchise's history. And he was a really big part of that.
And that 2006 squad may have been the most talented in franchise history. Shawne Merriman certainly believes so.
There's just the establishment of dominance that we had as a team, especially that 06 year. I don't think, and I say this now, and I say it in a serious manner, I think that 06 team will match up against anybody in any era, in any set of football, because that's what type of team we had.
You're so focused on, we got to win this next game. Okay, now we got to win this next game. You're not even really thinking about anything else. And then now to sit and look back and you look at LT season, the production, I mean, it's crazy. You think about these numbers, right? Like some of these touchdown numbers he had that year. I'm not sure anyone will ever beat him. And
there was no weak links. There was no weak links with another team watching us and saying, you know what, we're going to try this area to fill because they're weak at this position. There was none. So in our mentality and how we played and how we got after the quarterback, how we finished tackles, if you looked at that 06 team and put us at any team in the 90s, put us at any team in the 80s and see what we match up at across the board, and I guarantee you we'll be neck and neck in a lot of positions.
Just the excitement in San Diego, the excitement of those games. I remember thinking, you know, from the blimp, it must look like a sea urchin or something, like a sea anemone with the stadium just overflowing with people and going crazy. I mean, it was so loud, and people just loved this guy. LT could have been mayor. He probably could have been governor of the state of California. He was so popular.
Sam Farmer witnessed the dominance of that 06 Chargers team firsthand. He saw how LaDainian Tomlinson developed as a player, a man, and a Chargers icon.
You know, he was a Southern California superstar when Southern California didn't have the NFL other than the Chargers. There was no NFL team in Los Angeles. This was a guy, maybe one of the last great running backs in a passing league. LT was the last of his kind, really. A guy who, now you had Adrian Petersons, you had, you know, some great backs over the years, but year in and year out, LT was so reliable and such a touchdown machine. He embodied the sort of excitement. He was the face of the San Diego Chargers. And usually it's a quarterback who's the face of a franchise, a coach who's the face of a franchise. There weren't a lot of running backs who were faces of the franchise. LT was definitely the face of the Chargers.
This has been an LA Chargers production. Coming up next on the series finale of Running for History, we take a deep dive into the record-breaking game that forever cemented LaDainian Tomlinson in football history.
So when Shawne had the sack fumble and we got the ball back, and somebody, I think it was Lorenzo, ran over to me and looked at me like, it's about to happen, you know? And I was thinking like, man, you're right.
It was electric, especially for me, because now that I think about it, you know, every time they chant LT, I was just kind of like visualize in the back of my mind, and they, Big Mac, Big Mac, Big Mac, you know what I'm saying? So I'd be like, all right, let's go. We got to get out of here. You know what I'm saying? We got to score right back now.
I remember Marty Schottenheimer always saying, there are championship moments throughout your career that you're going to enjoy. You know, because Marty used to say, no, you know, I didn't win the Super Bowl, but I had championship moments. So that day, no question about it, Chris, that was a championship moment.
If you want to see more content like this, check out the link right here.